this.
Thank you.
Thank you. I now recognize Congresswoman Tlaib for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the panelists for being here. In March 2018, under the leadership of former FEMA Administrator Long, FEMA eliminated all references to climate change from its 4-year strategic plan. Back in the Michigan's 13th congressional district that I proudly represent, we know climate change is happening. We see it all the time. We have had one of the wettest years on record with widespread flooding across my district, which has recently this year forced the governor to declare a state of emergency. So just to make sure, and this is a question for all of you all on the panel, is there anyone on this panel who believes climate change is not currently happening? Okay, that's wonderful. Everyone on this panel believes climate change is occurring, and yet FEMA removed all references to it in its plan for the next 4 years. The decision concerns me greatly. An agency tasked with responding to natural, weather-related disasters cannot remove all references to changes in climate and expect for you all to do your job or for the department to do their job. FEMA pretending climate change doesn't exist is not an action plan. So, Mr. Witt, as a former director of FEMA and Dr. Mann as a climate scientist, does it concern you that FEMA removed climate change from its strategic plan? And is it important for FEMA to commit to incorporating climate change in their long-term planning?
I think climate change is a big part of what we're seeing today. Last month, the month of May, we had 500 tornadoes. A year ago, May, it was 240. We just had a historic river flood on the Arkansas River. It was the biggest flood since 1945, 16 to 18 feet higher than it crested in 1945. We see at my farm, we got 6 inches of rain in 2 hours, which has never happened. We have seen 10 to 20 inches of rain in Iowa and Oklahoma and in the Midwest, and it's causing an extreme amount of flooding. So we're facing sea level rising, everything from California to the East Coast. That is part of climate change. Our ocean is warming. We're having more hurricanes because the ocean is warming, and they're much stronger and much more devastating. So yes, I believe it's happening.
And former Witt, and before I go to, do you think this affected FEMA's effectiveness in responding to natural disasters when they chose not to consider climate change when developing a strategic plan?
I don't think it affected their response to disasters. I think it affects them in the way of the long-term planning and how to mitigate it for the future. So that has to be a qualifier.
Yeah, and Dr. Mann?
Yeah, I wanted to correct a number of fallacies that we've heard here today when it comes to the connection between climate change and extreme weather events. First of all, you sometimes hear this myth about there having been a supposed hurricane drought. And there's some sleight of hand going on there, because what's going on, Superstorm Sandy was a strong Category 3 and then weakened to a Category 2 hurricane off the coast of the U.S. East Coast. Now, it did go, as they say, extratropical. It technically was no longer a hurricane when it made landfall, but it was spinning off the East Coast for several days as a strong hurricane, building up a very large storm surge. And as we know, it was the storm surge that was so devastating to the Jersey coast and to New York City. So it's extremely misleading when you hear statements like that. And of course, Michael, my namesake, is one of a very small number of landfalling Category 5 hurricanes. It's the latest in the season we've ever seen that. So there's a clear climate change.
Absolutely, and thank you, Mr. Mann. And I'll tell you, misleading comments seems to be a norm here, and I'm making sure that I don't allow anybody to think it's normal to mislead. It's the same thing as lying. On June 14th, 2019, emails obtained by Environmental Defense Fund clearly show the culture of climate denial in the Trump White House. William Haper, a member of the President's National Security Council and the chair of the reported White House panel, convened solely to question the scientific evidence on climate change, said in emails to the Heartland Institute, a climate change denying interest group, that he wanted to figure out a way to make his ideas, quote, more useful to a wider readership. Mr. Hepper also emailed NASA Administrator Jim Brinston to say that NASA should, quote, systematically sidestep the science on global warming. So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I would like to enter these emails into record. I wish this wasn't shocking, but unfortunately this is part of the course of this administration and the White House and the fossil fuel dark money groups conspiring to deny reality and build misinformation campaign designed to threaten the future of our children. And so with that, I yield the rest of my time and thank again all of you for your important conversation on this.
Thank you. The chair now recognizes Congressman Higgins for 5 minutes of oral questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Curry, you mentioned in your opening statement, you referred